Romulus, Remus, Romulus, Remus, Romulus, Remus, Romulus, Remus. I'm one who commands, ruling all provinces in my empire. Build aqueducts and say my name's Augustus. It's the Pax Romana. Now, walk into the forum through the arch made of marble rock. Grand Uncle Caesar joined up with Cleopatra. If he hadn't died on the Ides, he'd see me and he'd say, "Man, that's how I beat Pompey." Armies are obeying me, goods are moving really. All right, so I figured we'd start with a little ancient Rome, Mr. Nicky. Today. I hope all of you guys are doing well or just getting your day started. I know some of you are in first period now. We'll watch the rest of that Mr. Nicky video on ancient Rome tomorrow or, tomorrow. We'll watch it tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday. Before I get back to the Pax Romana and essentially the daily life of Rome and then the fall of the Roman Empire that you've been learning about for quite some time now. Real quick, your homework for tonight, I posted it yesterday, the Chapter 8, Section 3 worksheet. It's due tomorrow, so if you have some time after the video, please make sure you get that done, and you'll have a test Friday, all right? The test Friday will be open note, all right? Just a heads up. So if you're really paying attention today, you're probably going to be very excited knowing that your test Friday will be open note. So if you want to start making review sheets tonight, it's a great thing to do. Or printing out your notes or rewriting notes or things that I've highlighted. That's a great thing to do. I'm just going to try to make your life a little easier on Friday, give you guys a nice solid test grade before your trimester exam. Not next week, but the week after, all right, because we are dwindling down towards the end. Now, some of you are in different spots. So I go to the next slide. If that is not the slide your class is on, just kind of fast forward the video to where you guys are up to and then continue from there. All right. Here we go. All right. So I know period 1, you're on Roman literature still. That's why I'm starting way back here, other classes, because period 1 is a little bit behind. They had the prayer service, so I missed a class with them that day. Now, with Roman literature, there are a lot of Latin works that were produced during the height of the Roman Empire, the Pax Romana. Now, the most famous work of Roman literature that came out of the Pax Romana was the Aeneid. It was an epic poem, a poem of a hero. Supposedly, in the epic poem, a Trojan prince escaped Troy that was burned and sacked by the ancient Greek soldiers, the Mycenaeans. The Trojan prince escaped and he headed to Italy, founded the city of Rome, and the writer of this epic poem, all right, was a man named Virgil. Virgil was a Roman born peasant. He eventually learned how to read and write in Greek and Latin, so he studied Greek. He built the Aeneid off of the Iliad and the Odyssey. He read Homer, studied Homer, and he created his own work of literature. Unfortunately, he died before the Aeneid was published. It was Augustus that heard about this great epic poem, heard about Virgil's work, and Augustus believed that he was essentially this prince, just not Trojan, but the Roman version. And due to this poem and other works of Virgil, Virgil is considered to be their national poet, right? Much like how some countries today have historical writers or authors that they idolize, kind of like a celebrity. Like we have some famous writers in our history: Mark Twain, Ernest Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald. If you don't know who they are, you'll definitely learn about them over the course of the next couple of years, if not in high school. Now, a very famous Roman historian that you need to know for Friday is Livy. Livy gives most of the detail we know about the Roman Empire. He wrote Rome's rise to power in his book History of Rome, and most of his book is essentially a national myth. I apologize for the background noise. I'll try to fix that on the next slide. Now, Livy has given some history of Rome. We know a lot about what happened throughout each emperor's time in Rome. We also know that Livy used a lot of myth in creating Rome's history, so his book is not entirely accurate. The legend of Romulus and Remus we get from Livy. All right, that is one legend we get from Livy. So, likewise with the last video, if you miss anything, you can always go back. All right, know who Virgil, know who Livy is. Livy, famous Roman historian. Virgil was considered to be Rome's national poet. Now, the language of Rome, a language that you're going to learn next year in 8th grade, and some of you will go on to study it in high school. I strongly encourage you to do so. So Rome's language was Latin, all right? And most people in Rome spoke either Latin or Greek. There were some Romans that spoke what were considered to be Germanic languages, but they were not considered to be Romans. They were considered to be immigrants. Romans considered, the Germanic people barbarians because their day-to-day life was so different than Roman life. They didn't live in brick houses. They lived in houses made of like tree bark, all right, and wood. Latin was the language of Rome. A lot of the language we have today come from Latin, all right. There's 5 languages that come directly from Latin: Spanish, Portuguese, Romanian, Italian, and French. All right, all those languages come directly from Latin. When the Roman Empire collapsed in the year 476, Latin continued to be the language of Europe all the way to the year 1500. So if you were studying in the Middle Ages, which you'll learn about next chapter, next trimester, if you were studying in the Middle Ages, you studied Latin. Everything you learned was in Latin. Right? Latin became the basis of modern languages. Today, it was the official language of the church all the way into the 1900s. Moving on to Roman architecture, and we still see examples of Roman architecture in our society. If you ever go to Washington, D.C., and visit any of the monuments there, any of the public buildings, the Capitol, the White House, some of those buildings are constructed with the same architectural and engineering design created by the Romans thousands of years ago. And the Romans perfected the use of 3 important aspects of architecture. All right, arches, all right, they made out of marble, all right, other types of stone. Dome ceilings, all right, domes were a particular engineering design, first created by the Romans, using the arch to create it, and then concrete. All right, the arches were important because they used the arches to build the aqueducts. The aqueducts were the way Romans carried water from different areas throughout Italy into the city, into people's private homes, all right, into public bathhouses. Aqueducts were essentially the Romans' plumbing system, all right, just like you have water running into your house from the street. There's water pipes in the street that carry water into your house, all right, underground. The Romans had aqueducts. Most of them were above ground. Some were underground. And some of those aqueducts that they built thousands of years ago are still active and still carry water through them to this day, thousands of years later. It's an incredible architectural design. Now, they're first to invent and use concrete. Concrete was important because it made buildings sturdier, allowed them to be built taller, last longer. 2 of the most famous ancient buildings constructed by the Romans. There's a lot of them, but the ones you need to know, the Colosseum, which we talked about already. Then there's the Pantheon. The Pantheon was a temple. Originally, it was a temple built to honor Rome's gods. And then it was converted into a church. All right, the emperor that commissioned the building of the Pantheon was the Emperor Hadrian. All right, he was the one that commissioned the building of the Pantheon. All right, this is the last slide for Section 2. So for some classes that already finished Section 2, you didn't have to worry about this portion of the video. But Period 1 and maybe another class, I forget which class, you should have gotten the notes. You needed to listen to these. first couple slides to get the notes. If you miss anything, you can always go back and watch the video. All right. If your friend next to you is not watching the video or not paying attention, please remind them to go back and watch the video because these notes will not be up on the TV tomorrow. I'll answer any questions you may have on any of the slides I teach about in the video, but I'm not leaving the slides up. So make sure you copy the information down and highlight what I have highlighted. Moving on. All right, Chapter 8, Section 3, we're going to talk about the collapse of the Roman Empire. Now, it took hundreds of years for the Roman Empire to collapse. All right, the Pax Romana is considered to be the height of Roman history, with the beginning of Augustus, and then after Marcus Aurelius, you start to see a decline in terms of size, in terms of population, in terms of stability and prosperity. After Marcus Aurelius is really when you see all those things start to decline, right? And the emperor after Marcus Aurelius was Marcus Aurelius' son, Commodus. That's how you pronounce his name, Commodus. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. Right, I meant to highlight. Where's the highlight? There we go. Now, Commodus was not a very well-liked emperor. The military hated him. Right? He was not a good field commander like his father, Marcus Aurelius. He was a soldier. He had military experience, but he was not a good field commander. And what really hurt him with the military is he actually signed a treaty with the Germanic people, giving up Roman territory that was part of Rome going back to Julius Caesar. And Marcus Aurelius fought to keep it. He waged a war. Commodus didn't want to continue waging the war. He really wanted to enjoy the luxuries of being an emperor in Rome, so he signed a peace treaty. The military, the generals were not happy about that. And then when Commodus returned to Rome, he had all these lavish parties, wasted people's money. Roman people kind of got tired of him. There was actually a food shortage. There was an economic decline. Commodus unlawfully had some individuals murdered within the Senate, within the royal family, or not directly related to him, like some of his close friends. There was a conspiracy to assassinate him. It wasn't so much a conspiracy, it was actually something that was going to happen. He got wind of it and eventually killed the assassin. Now, due to all of this civil unrest, Commodus eventually tried to win favor with the people by having these gladiatorial games. And Commodus tried to win favor of these people by taking part in the gladiatorial games. So Commodus was an emperor that spent time fighting as a gladiator. He staged the gladiator spectacles that he fought in so that he would always win. And eventually, his athletic trainer grew tired of training him and preparing him for these events, and in 192, his athletic trainer killed him. Eventually, the emperor, after Commodus, comes to power, and I don't know exactly what happened to the athletic trainer, but I'm sure he was eventually disposed of, to put it nicely. Now, after Commodus, you have a brief period of chaos, and then a Roman general by the name of Septimus Severus becomes emperor and establishes a new dynasty of emperors. Septimus Severus was emperor on this idea that pay the army well, and you'll be able to stay in power forever. All right, Septimus Severus greatly reduced the authority of the Senate and increased the power of the emperor. He took money that was supposed to go to senators and used that to pay the military. Right? He believed in paying the military, paying the soldiers, and did not worry about the rest, essentially. All right, so no, Commodus spent some time fighting as a gladiator, and know that Septimus Severus comes to power after him, and was focused on paying the army well to stay in power. Now, if you miss anything on the slide, you can always go back. All right, now we're going to get into the causes to the fall of the Roman Empire. There are 5 causes, all right, and this slide you need to know for the test on Friday. You'll have to be able to write on the test the political, write out 5 causes to the fall of Rome. All right, there'll be 5 lines, 5 bullet points, and all you have to tell me is there were political causes or political problems, economic problems, social problems, military problems, and then last but not least, you have the Germanic invasions. All right, those were the five causes to the fall of Rome. We're going to get a little more in depth of each cause on the next couple slides. We're going to talk about the economic problems, the social problems, the military problems, and then the political problems. And the Germanic invasions we'll talk more about tomorrow and conclude chapter 8. I'm just leaving this up for a couple seconds for some of you to finish copying down, or you can pause the video and then go back to it. So the economic problems that caused the fall of the Roman Empire is number one, the Germanic tribes. All right, the Germanic tribes disrupted trade. All right, they attacked merchants traveling along the outskirts of the empire, stole those valuable goods, cost the empire money, and they also attacked merchants traveling throughout the Mediterranean Sea by boat. All right, the Roman Navy got preoccupied with the internal conflict among generals and emperors and the Praetorian Guard, that those traders were left open to be attacked. All right, and that's what the Germanic tribes did. The government also started to raise taxes, lost out on resources due to the Germanic tribes, and you start to see the Roman people suffer from inflation. Inflation is the rapidly increasing of prices. When the price of a particular good or commodity or service starts to go up, that means there's inflation. For example, right now, all right, gas prices go up, that's inflation. If you see the price of milk go up, you see the price of lumber go up. You probably don't see the price of lumber, but you know the price of, for example, the candy you buy in the cafeteria go up, from one month to the next, or maybe next year you see the price of candy go up. You're like, oh my goodness, these Airheads were $5, and next year they're $6 or whatever they are. That's an example. That's inflation, and the reason why is because there's more currency in circulation. So the Romans started to produce more coins, gold and silver coins. That should be an arrow there. And they would they melted the gold. They used less gold, less silver in coins, which decreased the value of coin. So inflation, when you inflate something, it expands. Prices expand, and the money supply expands. That's basically the economic 101 way of explaining inflation. And that caused trade to decline. People started to move away from using coins and began to barter, right, or exchange for goods. Exchange goods without using, right, the Roman coins and money. And so they started to use a barter system. All right. Move on. Right, the social problems going on within Rome. Many Romans lost faith in the government, lost faith in the Senate. A lot of senators were corrupt, made false promises, did corrupt things to stay in power. Right, they also didn't trust the emperors, didn't trust the Roman generals, which caused a great deal of problems. On top of that, you have food shortage. Right, Egypt experienced a drought. You have the shortage of food distribution. All right, if the population is not being fed properly, they're going to get a little angry. All right, just like if you're at home and or you get home from school or from your sport, there's no dinner. Maybe you're a little angry because you're hungry and there's no food for you to eat. Right. All right. So just like when you're sometimes unhappy that there's not a decent meal, or you open a pantry and you notice your favorite snack or treat, right, to eat in between meals or after meals is not there, you get a little angry, or maybe you say to your parents, there's nothing good in the house to eat, and there is, but it's not what you're looking for, right? That's kind of how the Roman people felt. All right, it led to a lot of social problems, and it was actually disease. There was a plague that swept through the city of Rome, greatly affected the population to the point where people had to isolate themselves. Right, a lot of people that were sick were exiled out of the city. All right, to colonies. All right, to distant areas away from the large population. All right, so there was a plague or disease that spread widely throughout the empire, You have food shortage and disease, right? And the big thing, I know you have a lot to write on this slide, right? The big social problems was Romans losing faith in the government, all right? Faith in the Senate, losing faith in tribunes, losing faith in the consuls and the emperors. All right, I'll leave this up for a couple seconds for you to copy down, and then we'll move on to military problems. I think that's the next slide. So the problems in the military, as you have seen over the course of this chapter and even last chapter, a lot of military leaders started to take power in Rome, going back to the days of Julius Caesar. It's a constant power struggle among generals. You know, some generals got along, there was peace, there was prosperity, all right, but a lot of these military leaders constantly want the highest position within Rome, which is the position of emperor. A lot of emperors are murdered by the Praetorian Guard at this point in the Roman Empire. The Praetorian Guard influenced who was that person, right? It was very difficult for even emperors to trust the Praetorian Guard. I think at one point, I think in the 300s, there were like 22 out of 29 or 22 out of 25 emperors, all right, that were assassinated. Only like 3 or 4, or I'm sorry, like 5 or 6 died of natural causes. All right, it was a huge problem within the military, within the Praetorian Guard, within the position of emperor. All right, the government started to also hire mercenaries because so many soldiers and generals were untrustworthy. Mercenaries are soldiers from another state, all right, like Germanic people, barbarians, people outside of Rome, people that speak a different language, people that have no affiliation to a particular country. For example, you know, an example of like a modern day mercenary would be like the United States hiring um, Russian spies to go into Israel and the Gaza to see what's going on between Israel and the Palestinians. Right? That would be like they're mercenaries, Russian spies that that are not part of the United States and getting paid by the United States government are hired mercenaries. Know what mercenaries are? They existed going back to the days of the Roman Empire. They're soldiers hired by a foreign country with the idea of making money. Right? So a lot of these mercenaries were just in it for the money. They had no loyalty to the empire, no loyalty, right, to the state, right, to the government that was paying them. As long as they were getting paid, they did the job, right, but they didn't necessarily care, all right, to seize any power within that empire or that foreign country that hired them, which is a huge problem because now you have soldiers fighting alongside with mercenaries. All right, so this is the slide on the problems in the military. Again, if you missed anything, you can always go back and watch the video. All right. Now, the political problems, all right, that caused for the fall of the Roman Empire goes back to Augustus. When Augustus died, he never created a rule stating how the next emperor would be chosen. Right? Unlike our nation, our founding fathers created a constitution that dictates, the Constitution defines how we elect our leaders. Every 2 years, we elect members of the House. Every 6 years, we elect senators. Every 4 years, we elect a president. Our government, that's right in the Constitution. That was written down back in 1787. All right, so there's a system in place. All right, no president can break that system because then they would be breaking the law, and that would probably lead to civil unrest. Okay, in Rome, there was never a constitution stating how the emperor, right, would be chosen. People knew how senators were chosen. People knew how consuls were chosen. All right, that was written down in a Roman state constitution, but there was no rule to the imperator. There was this thing as a dictator, but no such thing as an emperor. And Augustus never made a law, all right, which made the position open for the taking. Right, the Praetorian Guard tried to take part of the empire at one point. Now, there were two emperors we're going to talk about more tomorrow that tried to keep the empire intact. That was Diocletian and Constantine. But the biggest political problem, all right, especially at this point in the Roman Empire, is no one knew who would inherit the throne of Rome. All right, some people thought it should go to the emperor's son. Some people thought it should go to the highest ranking general. All right, there was nothing in place. All right, so this is the last. All right, you can. All right, here. All right, so this slide here is the last slide. The next slide you can totally disregard. It's from last year. All right, it's the slide I'll start with tomorrow at the beginning of class. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And don't forget to submit the Chapter 8, Section 3 homework if you didn't do so. If you have time to work on it now, feel free to do so. All right, have a good day. See you guys in class tomorrow. Bye. Slide for today. Really disregard that slide. That'll be updated. That should say Thursday. Obviously, it's